When Humanoid made a comeback in 2019 with the album Built by Humanoid, it received a largely positive response, but a subtly mixed reception from those hoping that the project would return to its basic, straightforward acid roots. 2020's two EPs went further into the experimental IDM territory, so it was with some surprise that Humanoid became one of the FSOL Digital main projects in 2021, with a stark shift towards straightforward acid. And it's those releases we'll be looking at today on Earthbeat Visions, a history of the future sound of London. Humanoid Orfan Atmosphere EP. Release date 19th May 2021. I'm lucky enough to be given information well ahead of schedule, and sometimes even help make suggestions and contributions towards potential future releases. I don't say this to show off, but to highlight just how much is going on in the FSOL camp, because despite being aware of something like 30 releases that might or might not happen, I was totally unaware of the existence of this EP until I got an email from the FSOL Digital Bandcamp one day in May 2021. It doesn't seem to have garnered a huge response from fans, sadly, maybe due to its digital-only release, comparative lack of promotion, or something else, which is a shame as it's a really fun EP. Taking its title from the Built by Humanoid track of the same name, it features two alternative takes of Orphan Atmosphere, as well as a remix of APE from the same album, and a new recording. Following recent Humanoid releases taking in breaks, fractured acid sound design, dark atmospheric IDM and playful dancey electronica, Orphan Atmosphere finds the project heading further towards the dance floor with elements of rave and Orteca-esque glitch hop. At a fairly brief 15 minutes, it is in and out before you know it, and as the fifth Humanoid EP in the space of 3 years, finds the project very much at home in this short form structure. Orphan Atmosphere TXK? Something like that. In an unexpected but brilliant move, Brian returns to Built by Humanoid's brief fractured opening track and reimagines it as an acid-forward rave piece. Garnering favourable comparisons to early Aphex, the track is a fantastic slice of chunky, gritty dance music and a fine addition to the Humanoid canon. Octant Atmosphere. After a ravey reworking, Octant Atmosphere reimagines Orphan Atmosphere as a glitch hop piece with slow rolling beats and complex glitchy programming. The original synth elements are pushed to the back under heavy reverb, providing more atmosphere than melody, with the punchy crunchy beats taking the bulk of the focus here. Just when you think Humanoid has pushed the limits of the project's sound, something like this comes along and takes it in an entirely new direction. Savage elements. Going further down the glitch hop tunnel on Orphan Atmosphere's sole original composition, there's a very distinctive Orteca feel to the track. I'd be genuinely surprised if Draft 7.3 wasn't floating around somewhere in the back of Brian's mind when he was making the piece. One of the loudest and harshest sounding tracks in the wider Dougans Cobain catalogue, it's also one of my favourites, a wonderfully strange, uncompromising piece of music. APE. The final track on Orphan Atmosphere is an alternate take of APE, and maybe the only piece on the EP that isn't a standout. Although with a little more focus on atmospherics, it's effectively an extended version of the original really, adding comparatively little to proceedings. When playing the two alongside each other, there are some interesting textural additions, but on the whole I'd rather have had a completely new piece in its place. Humanoid, 7 songs. Release date 30th of July 2021, 12-inch and 10-inch and digital download. 2nd of October 2021, CD bonus edition digital download. Humanoid invades Detuned with a new and highly anticipated 7-song album of classic acid cuts. Flashback to the 88 acid house spirit. Brian Dougans embarks on another journey of 303 breakbeat euphoria followed by fast, frantic and beat-driven productions. The additional 10-inch completes the hallucinating trip with 2 floating acidic corkers. On 12th May, 7 songs was announced with a release date of 5th of July. A week later, the date was pushed back to the 30th of July. Final releases in the early 2020s were an absolute nightmare. Detuned, of course, had released a number of exclusive tracks and remixes from FSOL and Humanoid over the previous few years on their compilations and split 12-inch series. Still, this is the first full release of a conventional album not to come out on FSOL Digital, Monstrous, Bubble Records or similar since 2005, making it a notable release in itself. So much so that when it was posted on the FSOL Facebook group, at least one fan questioned whether it was the same Humanoid, given that it wasn't an FSOL Digital release. The other striking difference here is the sound. After spending several years releasing Humanoid material in various IDM styles, from Ortega-esque glitchy sound design to Aphex-like hyperspeed rave, plus chiptune, stark skittering beat workouts, mangled futuristic acid, and even Environment 6 style melodic electronica, Brian makes a sharp left turn into straightforward fall-to-the-floor acid. There's not even a hint of soundscape-leaning music, atmospherics or abstract experimental beatwork. There are no environments or crossfades, just acid banger after acid banger. The album's 12-inch and 10-inch format is a touch awkward. I can't be the only one who finds flipping sides every 1 or 2 songs totally unconducive to a smooth listening experience. This is just an issue I have with dance music albums on double LP in general. Although it gives a particularly nice aesthetic, especially with pink and blue limited editions in existence. And then a few weeks after release, a CD edition was announced for release on 19th November, featuring a staggering 7 bonus tracks, making it not really 7 songs. Kevin Folks, aka Strictly Kev, aka DJ Food, who designed the art, was surprised at this, given that he was only given 3 titles to add as bonus tracks. The 4 remaining tracks added at the last minute, after the artwork was complete, and thus aren't even listed on the sleeve. Of these extras, 3 have previously been heard, with subtly different mixes of Farpoint and Copilot being a compilation track and a Quantel EP track respectively, and Tower being another compilation piece. As ever, having these oddities and digital tracks brought together on a release I'm more likely to listen to is very much a plus point for me. All 7 bonus tracks are generally in the same style as the rest of the album. It was released by FSOL over a month earlier than the general release date. Coming in a year where physical releases began to be a shift away from FSOL Digital, coming on other labels with other designers, the art for 7 songs is aesthetically quite different to past Humanoid releases, featuring neither the Built by Humanoid era logo or the 1988 Stack of Humanoid font. The fairly stark cover with overlapping squares and circles is a clever reference to the blue and pink coloured vinyl inside the square sleeve. CD edition comes in a simple 4-panel digipack, only the second time a release fully coordinated by the band has come in a digipack, the first being The Wizards of Oz. The 5 symbols feature on the back cover of the digipack, although not anywhere on the vinyl edition, as well as on the inner sleeve in spot varnish, only visible when placed at an angle to the light. The same spot varnish effect is in place for the pink and blue aspects of the front and back cover, lending the largely minimal packaging an element of slightly luxurious feel. Amidst the middle of mangled imagery on the rear cover and digipack inner is a hidden photo of Brian's face. The surprise in the credits section is the inclusion of Gaz as co-writer on every track. Given that Brian has always discussed Humanoid in a solo context, it's generally considered that this is a result of the pair sharing credits on all their projects regardless of who created individual tracks. Longtime collaborator Will White is credited for co-writing Headset, a track sharing a name with Brian and Will's production and mixing project. An interesting line in the CD credits suggests the label might be FSOL Digital /Future Sound Recordings /EBV. Why not? The album's title is a reference to the debut album by one of Brian's favourites, 23 Skidoo. While there are some very obviously humanoid sounding tracks in the 2014 to 2020 material, there's also a heavy stylistic crossover with FSOL material from the same period, and this has always sat very slightly oddly with me. With this move to the project's classic sound, the album has its own very strong identity, and that makes it an interesting and very worthwhile change in direction. All in all, it feels like the start of the second era of the Humanoid revival. Truck. 7 songs, pulls no punches, opening with a bang. Truck starts with 4 to the floor kicks and a solid 303 line. Vocal snippets and atmospheric synth elements are added for texture, and eventually the beat picks up with snares and hats. The drums are chunky, quite possibly a 909, and the acid lines are modulated, creating a typical classic acid house sound. Despite this, the rhythms are constantly changing with different elements coming and going throughout, adding variety where a simple loop could easily suffice. There's even a new synth line that comes in for the final 30 seconds, creating a mellow outro. Last Scene. Last Scene opens with fuzzy sawtooth synth arpeggios before 2 intertwining 303 lines take over. Then the 4 to the floor drums come in and we're back into chunky acid banger territory again. The opening arps reappear in the second half, their own sounds modulated much like the 303s, creating a complex mesh of interlinked synth textures. Pyramid 17. Starting as a fairly conventional acid house piece, Pyramid 17 throws in some intriguing aspects that make it stand out from the rest of the pieces on 7 songs. A drum fill that sounds like it comes from People Living Today of all things, vocal sample almost certainly lifted from Lifeforms, and a minor key synth pad that adds a slightly brooding, introspective feel to an otherwise highly energetic, hedonistic sounding dance track. The drums drop out often enough to stop the piece becoming too repetitive, creating an incredibly straightforward yet continually stimulating piece. Swerver. One of the less acidic pieces on 7 songs, Swerver features the album's standard acid house techno sound, but led by a muffled synth arpeggio with the usual 303 line only appearing in the second half and much more in the background than expected. Backward sounding synth notes appear briefly halfway through, adding textural variety. Osculated. After fairly typical kick snare hat arrangements on the album's first 4 tracks, Osculated brings a little timbre variety to 7 songs with bongos, scrapers and some lo-fi drum machine samples, creating a denser rhythm track. As with Swerver, the 303 takes a back seat role for the most part, with the melodic emphasis being on some atmospheric patterns and FM synth players, the acid bass being largely reduced to a single note at the start of each bar. Probably the closest the album comes to FSOL style atmospherics, and a bit of a breather to close the 12-inch. Headset. Well, here we go. In the next 20 to 30 minutes I intend to take about 150 micrograms of LSD. I've previously done mushrooms and other forms of psychedelics, but I've never had an acid trip. It's going to be a great time, so stick along for the journey and let's see how it goes. Whoever this sample chap is, he keeps us company throughout Headset, his voice fed through a phaser to give a psychedelic effect while he describes his first LSD experience. Not everything he says is easily decipherable, sadly, but there are some enjoyable insights like being extremely perceptive to light, and an hour of extreme kaleidoscopic fractalization. I can't say that when I'm sober and straight, so I wouldn't know what to think what it's like saying that on acid. Behind him is the most conventional sounding piece on 7 songs with a very straightforward 4 to the floor house beat, a single catchy 303 line and some major key synth pads. It's Brian doing what can only be called club music with the help of regular collaborator Will White, who gets a co-writing credit here. Our acid tripper sadly leaves the track at around the 5-minute mark, and we never get to find out how his voyage comes to a close. The title references Headset, the production and mixing duo of Brian and Will. Seen Last. At 12 minutes and 8 seconds, that's a beast of a runtime, especially for a 2021 track. With many FSOL and Humanoid tracks running to the 3 minutes or less mark, it's remarkable to get such a long piece out of the blue like this. After the polished house of Headset, Seen Last is raw and heavy, with a slightly distorted sounding 909 beat, several 303 lines and huge textural synth pads. As the title suggests, the track is effectively an extended and more developed version of the album's earlier track Last Scene, with that piece's elements stretched and reworked to their limits. The final 3 minutes sees the appearance of a new 303 line and some different, more atmospheric pads, acting as a coda to the piece and the vinyl edition of the album. Tower. Tower first turned up in 2020 on the Touched Electronics 005 compilation, and later found its way onto the expanded CD and digital editions of 7 songs. With a melody reminiscent of 808 State's classic Flow Coma, huge pounding beats and layers of synth distortion is a monster of an acid track. More atmospheric pads arrive in the second half, followed by bit-crushed samples and chopped-up beats, creating a truly ominous feeling. Whatever the titular tower is, it doesn't bode well for those who lay eye on it. Battle Storms. The first track on 7 songs to eschew the 4-to-the-floor house techno rhythm approach, Battle Storms instead utilises bit-crushed breakbeat loops and digitally processed metallic percussion to drive the track forward. A fast, intense, distorted 303 undergoes some painful sounding filtering, reaching a crescendo with further chunky breakbeats in proper higher state of consciousness style. The first track on 7 songs to include the classic rave whistle sound. The tape-saturated lo-fi textures here suggest it may have been an earlier recording, one of the 2016 sessions Brian mentioned in the origins of Built by Humanoid, kind of like the original Humanoid type sound. A compact piece with several interlocking 303 lines and dark synth pads, is probably the most conventionally melodic track on the album and a real highlight. Monthok. Another in the more lo-fi sounding Humanoid tracks, Monthok is an oddly fractured piece that, despite its 4-to-the-floor beats, doesn't sound especially dance floor friendly. The drums and acidic 303 lines keep it more rooted fully in Humanoid territory, but the sparse synth pads and bizarre drum textures that come and go throughout make it feel a little more experimental than the bulk of the material on 7 songs, making an enjoyable change of pace that does nothing to derail the album's consistent sound. It even closes with a very brief environment of water and chirping crickets. KDP/12. I was honestly dreading doing the track by track for 7 songs because I envisaged myself having to try and come up with 14 different variations of another acid house banger. Thankfully there turned out to be a lot more to say. Still, it's reached that point. KDP12 is another acid banger. 4-to-the-floor kick, gradually rising 303 line, further synths, adding counterpoint. It's all there. The Farpoint. The Farpoint first appeared on the 2019 compilation Repeat under the name Farpoint before appearing as an unlisted bonus track on the expanded edition of 7 songs 2 years later. One of the early Built by Humanoid tracks, created when the aim was still to work on material along the tape-saturated lo-fi acid sound of sessions 84 to 88, the track utilizes a steady kick and tinny breakbeat, 303 acid line and a warm, droning synth pad. For its inclusion on 7 songs, a brief field recording of water and birds opens the piece, and a recording of what sounds like Pete Waterman announcing Stack of Humanoid's performance on the Hitman and Her closes the track and album with a wonderfully daft and meta moment. St 8818 Humanoid. I hate that title. Release date 3rd of December 2021, 12-inch. 6th of April 2022, CD and expanded download. In October 21, an official announcement was made that D-Tune's relationship with Humanoid would continue in the form of a new 12-inch matching a remastered version of the classic Stack of Humanoid with 3 remixes of 2019's reimagining St 8818 by none other than Ortega, Luke Vibert and Mike Dredd, an all-star IDM lineup. Further IDM points are won with the artwork created by the Designers Republic, and with lengthy liner notes by Ortega's Sean Booth about his brief time studying professional audio systems at Salford College. During his time there, he met Brian, watching him, Bugs and Colin working on Eurotechno, and also heard a tape of his acid stuff from the time, including Stacker Humanoid, which charted shortly afterwards. He asked Brian which studio he used to create the material, and Brian replied that it was all made at home. So Sean left, got a job, him and Rob bought a 202 and Ortega had begun. Given Aphex has also described his career as partially indebted to Humanoid and Eurotechno, it's probably about time Warp sent Brian a check. The inner sleeve also features a smudged version of the Built by Humanoid logo and title text, as well as the standard black edition. 500 copies of Agenda Vinyl exist, as well as 250 clear 12 inches sold exclusively through Bleep. The Bandcamp edition features slightly different naming of the remixes to the 12 inch because that's how it always works. Following the expanded CD edition of 7 songs, St. 8818 went on to be reissued on CD and digital by FSOL Digital a few months later, in April 22. So we're skipping ahead a year now, featuring a further 8 remixes, the original St. 8818 and 3 new bonus pieces. The usual FSOL Digital shenanigans are at play here, with the CD being referred to as St. 8818 Humanoid, other than on its hype sticker, and also on the download where it's just the one word, and the 2 formats having different track lists with exclusives on each, and the 3 original tracks not even being listed on the CD sleeve, once again with the titles only coming from the press release sent to stores selling the CD. It's become a game at this point just to work out what the hell is going on. Among the FSOL Digital release tracks is the Plaid remix, which was released several years prior, which I already covered a few videos ago. Sod it. Luke Vibert remix, also known as Luke Vibert mix. Luke Vibert takes the track and loosens it up, adding in a roomy breakbeat and adding in warm, jazzy synth pads, while retaining the original 303 line and Berserk samples. It's pretty much what you would want and expect from a Vibert remix. Ortega A664 mix, also known as A664 mix by Ortega. Ortega's take on the track is a wonderful mix of old and new, with elements of their digital sound design in there, but also a keen eye on the past, with the piece never moving too far away from its dancey acid origins. Particularly enjoyable to hear a new Ortega production with a 303 line in it. In a nice touch, the A664 is a road that links Sean and Rob's hometown of Rochdale with Manchester, where Humanoid was formed. Mike Dredd mix, also known as Mike Dredd remix. Mike Dredd brings the biggest overhaul of the 3 remixes on the 12 inch, adding his own 303 melody and beats, largely limiting the original to the Berserk samples, with 8818's 303 only coming in briefly around the 5-minute mark, creating a new classic sounding acid track in the process. His own acid line even cheekily references the original Stacker Humanoid, effectively making it as much a Stacker remix as a 8818 one. Atmospheric pads and field recordings in the final minute create a more subdued outro to the piece, bringing the EP to an almost FSOL-like close. RTR remix. Analogical Force and Waymay artist RTR, aka Nicholas Lepage, something like that, provides a straight-up acidic electro remix, heads into weirdly chopped-up beats in the middle, as well as featuring some subtle background drones from Wanting. Creationator remix. A swift change in direction comes in the form of this breaksy remix from a Creationator, a friend of Brian's family and DIY artist. This was his first proper release. It's a wonderfully all over the place mix, shifting from breaks into jungle, electro and melodic IDM, an entire EP's worth of ideas condensed into 3.5 minutes. Tejada remix. John Tejada brings his usual sound to things with his remix, which starts in pretty straight up techno territory before his usual orbital inspired approach works its way in with some synth melodies in the second half. Eogen remix. Jerome Bax and Touch Music head honcho Martin Bolton's melodic IDM project Eogen provide what is probably my favourite remix of the whole package, with their usual blend of chunky beats and stunning emotive harmonic work. Brimming with beautiful synths, the piece is effectively a new Eogen composition that utilises the Beat Sister 8818er. It also samples snippets of You're Creeping Me Out. Gorgeous stuff. Roll Funkin remix. Regular collaborator Roll Funkin brings along maybe the most traditionally acidic mix of the set, with this slightly lo-fi piece pulsing with 303 lines, only one of which is from the original track. Also borrows from Wanting, and possibly a sound from Still Flowers. Yade remix. Brian remixing himself here, and perhaps unsurprisingly providing the most original version of the set. With no need to be precious about the original, having made it himself, this version instead lowers the tempo dramatically, focuses on atmospherics, once again sampling from various FSOL pieces in the process, resulting in something that runs close to ambient at times. Inky Pack remix. No actual FSOL this time, but Inky Pack, aka regular Touched Music contributor John Mace, does sample from Eurotechno instead, as well as Swab. Stylistically moving toward the turn of the century electro break sound, it's a very high energy mix with some lovely synth work at the end. Hiscam, I think. Mid-tempo, minimal acid. The rhythm is skeletal, the 303 line burbles up from Merc, and the pads recall FSOL track Frozen Air in their melody. Blue Beans. Another piece keeping to 80s mid-tempo slightly lo-fi acid, this time with phased percussion. The more developed structure and crisper sound in places suggest this may have been a 7 Songs era track rather than one of the earlier 2016 recordings. Made in Manchester. Given the title, I wonder if there's any original 80s material here. The utterly odd sound, panned hard left and right, could very easily be Z-Box in origin. This is full-on lo-fi, murky acid, dark and gloomy and moody. The track and CD edition with it closes with a minute-long environment featuring what is probably the Plogue Chip speech talking about futuristic robotic acid. The reverberated synths and plane flyover at the end feel like classic FSOL atmospheres. Detuned Records guest mix, We Are Various, 3rd of December 2021. To celebrate the release of the 8818 Humanoid EP, Brian created the first ever full-length Humanoid radio mix for Detune's show on the We Are Various online station. Unsurprisingly, given the year's Humanoid releases, the mix focuses on the project's acid sound, generally ignoring the more atmospheric IDM end of things. After an intro of digital voice synthesizers saying something, the mix kicks off with Luke Vibert's remix of 8818. This surprisingly fades into field recordings, not the first thing one thinks of when listening to the acid end of Humanoid, before an alternate version of KDP/12 called Nerve starts. The voice from Bring Me Home links this with Graham Massey's 2007 remix Body Electric. More digital voices and what might be gospel samples join the track with 2020's Anodyne remix. I warn you, this could scare you. Art Bell's Sound of Hell radio sample opens the Orteka remix, closing in on an environment of digital noises and samples, which then heads off into the 7 songs mix of Co-Pilot. After a brief loon call comes Truck. The Acid Taker from Headset introduces the mix's first completely new track, Sweet Acid Sound, with a straightforward house beat, slowed down voices and the usual 303 melodies. Some old FSOL flute links this in with another new piece, Bounce Patch 74, with a skipping rhythm and generally lo-fi texture. Mike Dredd's remix follows, closing on some reversed voices, field recordings and a wonderful snippet from a John Peel show.
And may they never be mistakenly called Stacker again. Anybody who does so will be turned into a frog. That's humanoid, as they really are.
We Come From The Future is next, mistakenly tagged as The Words of the Elders in the track list, but there's always got to be one. More voices, synths, and then Blunt. And then a hilarious moment of digital voice repeatedly saying fuck it before the track of that name comes in. The mix closes on the same announcement that ends 7 songs. It's since appeared on the We Are Various archives and Mixcloud page, with a rip circulating among fans. And that's your lot for this week, and I'm never going to have to say 8818 again, which is a minor victory in itself. Let me know your thoughts down below on all this wonderful humanoid acid, and occasionally IDM. Drop me a like or a subscribe or a share, all that really helps the channel. And I will be back next week looking at the first 2 Mind Maps releases, so I really hope you'll join me then. Created when the aim was to still work on material alongside the tape saturated lo-fi acid sound of Stacker's Humanoid Shaka Shkaba.